My name is Madison Hayes, and at 29, I never expected my own sister to uninvite me from her wedding. The betrayal cut deeper than any heartbreak I'd ever experienced. But sometimes, life's cruelest moments lead to unexpected blessings. My spontaneous trip to Italy wasn't planned as revenge, it was my way of choosing joy over bitterness. I had no idea those photos would go viral or change my life forever. Before I dive into this story that transformed everything, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and join me on this journey of turning heartbreak into the most magical adventure of my life. Growing up, Stephanie and I were the Hayes sisters, inseparable despite being 3 years apart. Our childhood home in Connecticut was filled with memories of building blanket forts, choreographing dance routines to Britney Spears songs, and staying up late to tell ghost stories with flashlights under our chins. We were different in many ways. I was always the ambitious one with big dreams and strong opinions, while Stephanie was more traditional, craving stability and belonging. But somehow, those differences complemented each other. "Madison, promise we'll always be best friends," she'd say, her pinky finger extended across our shared bedroom during our teenage years. "Forever and always," I'd promise, linking my pinky with hers. I left for college first, studying marketing with a semester abroad in Italy that changed my perspective on life. When I returned, I noticed Stephanie had become more independent, but our bond remained strong. During her college years, I became her emotional support system through heartbreaks and academic struggles. I remember driving 3 hours to her campus at 2 a.m. when her college boyfriend broke up with her before finals. I brought her favorite ice cream, tissues, and stayed up all night helping her study between crying sessions. Stephanie called me her rock. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Maddie," she sniffled, as I helped her prepare for her economics exam. After graduation, I landed a job at a digital marketing firm in New York City and quickly climbed the corporate ladder. By 29, I was leading major campaigns for international clients. Meanwhile, Stephanie struggled to find her footing professionally. I used my connections to help her secure her first real job at a public relations firm. When Stephanie met Bradley at a charity gala 3 years ago, I was genuinely happy for her. Bradley Williams came from a wealthy family with real estate developments throughout the Northeast. He was handsome, polished, and seemed to adore my sister. I noticed she began adopting his more conservative views and socializing with his high society friends, but I supported her happiness. "He's the one, Maddie," she gushed over brunch shortly after they started dating. "I've never felt this way before." The engagement came after 18 months of dating, a beautiful proposal at his family's beach house in the Hamptons. I was the first person Stephanie called. "He got down on one knee at sunset," she squealed through the phone. "And you'll never believe this, but I want you to be my maid of honor." I was touched and immediately accepted. The next 6 months were a whirlwind of wedding planning activities. I took time off work to accompany Stephanie to cake tastings, venue tours, and meetings with florists. I threw an engagement party at my apartment, spending nearly $2,000 on catering and decorations. The bridesmaid dress shopping day was particularly memorable. Stephanie had selected 7 friends, including me, as maid of honor. We sipped champagne at an exclusive bridal boutique, while the consultant brought out endless options of sage green gowns, Stephanie's chosen color. "What do you think of this one, Maddie?" Stephanie asked, as I tried on a silk A-line gown. "It's beautiful," I replied, twirling in the mirror. "But it's your vision that matters." I noticed one of the bridesmaids, Alyssa Bradley's cousin, whispering something to Stephanie, who quickly changed the subject. It seemed odd, but I dismissed it as wedding stress. By this point, I had spent over $5,000 on pre-wedding events and taken numerous days off work. My boss Diana had been understanding, but reminded me that our major campaign launch was approaching. I assured her I could balance both responsibilities. Over the following weeks, I noticed Stephanie becoming increasingly distant. My texts went unanswered for days, and our weekly sister dinners were repeatedly canceled. When we did speak, conversations centered exclusively on wedding details, rather than our usual heart-to-hearts. "Is everything okay?" I asked during a rare phone call. "Of course. Just super busy with everything," she replied, her voice oddly formal. Bradley's mother has very specific ideas about the reception. Something felt off, but I chalked it up to wedding stress. I had no idea that this was just the beginning of the heartbreak to come. The first real sign that something was seriously wrong came during a Sunday brunch at our parents' house. Stephanie had been unusually quiet throughout the meal, checking her phone nervously and exchanging glances with our mother. As we moved to the living room for coffee, she cleared her throat. "Maddie, I need to talk to you about the wedding," she began, fidgeting with her engagement ring, a massive diamond that caught the light with every nervous twist. "What's up? Did you change your mind about the bachelorette destination?" "Miami is getting expensive this time of year," I said, already mentally calculating budget alternatives. "No, it's not that." She glanced at our mother, who nodded encouragingly. "Bradley and I have been talking, and we think it makes more sense for his sister Amanda to be the maid of honor. Since our families are merging, you know? It's important to his parents." The room fell silent. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. 3 months of planning, thousands of dollars spent, countless hours invested, all while juggling my demanding career, and now I was being demoted without warning. "Oh," was all I could manage at first, trying to process the information. "I mean, I understand if that's what you want." "You're still a bridesmaid," Stephanie added quickly. "Nothing else changes. Amanda just takes the maid of honor role for the ceremony." I forced a smile, not wanting to cause a scene in front of our parents. "Of course. Whatever makes your day special." Our father changed the subject to baseball, while our mother busied herself clearing coffee cups. No one acknowledged what had just happened, or how inappropriate it was. That night, I cried in my apartment, feeling blindsided and hurt. But I was determined to be supportive. This was Stephanie's day, after all. I sent her a text the next morning. "Hey Steph, just wanted to say I'm totally fine with Amanda being MOH. I'm still so excited to stand beside you on your big day. Love you." She replied with a simple, "Thanks for understanding. Love you too," and a heart emoji. I threw myself back into bridesmaid duties with renewed dedication. When the bachelorette weekend in Miami approached, I discovered that Amanda had taken credit for much of the planning I'd already done: the beachfront rental, the restaurant reservations, the personalized gift bags. Still, I said nothing. During the second night of the bachelorette party, I stepped onto the rental's balcony for fresh air and overheard Alyssa and 2 other bridesmaids talking by the pool below. "Can you believe Madison is still acting like she's running this weekend?" Alyssa said. "Stephanie told us weeks ago she was getting demoted." "I know, right?" "Bradley's mom thought she was too controlling," another voice added. "Well, Bradley never liked her anyway. Says she's a bad influence on Stephanie with all her career ambition and independence." I froze, the conversation washing over me like ice water. Weeks ago? They all knew before me? And what was this about Bradley's mother and him not liking me? When we returned from Miami, I asked Stephanie for coffee, determined to clear the air. "I overheard some things at the bachelorette party," I began carefully. "It sounds like everyone knew about the maid of honor change before I did." Stephanie's expression hardened slightly. "I don't know what you heard, but it wasn't a big deal. I told a few people early because I was figuring out how to tell you. For weeks, though? And what's this about Bradley and his mother not liking me?" She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic as usual, Madison. This is exactly why I was nervous to tell you. Not everything is about you." Her dismissive tone stunned me into silence. This wasn't my sister, not the one who had once called me at 2 a.m. because she missed our talks. Not the one who had cried with gratitude when I helped her prepare for job interviews. That night, I called my best friend Rachel in tears. "I don't understand what's happening," I sobbed. "It's like Stephanie's become a completely different person." "Honey, I hate to say this," Rachel replied gently, "but have you considered that Bradley might be influencing her? It happens sometimes when people marry into wealthy families with strong expectations." "But we're sisters," I protested. "We've been through everything together." "Sometimes money and status change people," Rachel said, "or reveal who they truly are." I refused to believe that. Stephanie and I had too much history, too strong a bond. I resolved to try harder to connect with my sister, to show her I supported her unconditionally. But as the wedding grew closer, it became increasingly clear that something fundamental had shifted not just in our relationship, but in Stephanie herself. At our parents' anniversary dinner the following week, Stephanie spent the entire evening texting and barely acknowledged me. When I tried to remind her about our tradition of making homemade cards for our parents, she looked at me blankly. "Oh, Bradley's assistant picked up something from Tiffany's," she said dismissively. "Much classier than construction paper and glitter." I went home that night with a growing knot in my stomach. Something was very wrong, and I had a sinking feeling that the maid of honor demotion was just the beginning. 3 months before the wedding, I was reviewing work emails during my lunch break when a message from Stephanie appeared with the subject line, "Wedding Party Update." I opened it, expecting details about the rehearsal dinner or final dress fittings. Instead, my heart dropped as I scanned the content. "Dear friends and family, Bradley and I are excited to share the final lineup for our wedding party. Bridesmaids: Amanda Williams, maid of honor; Jessica Cooper, Brittany Rodriguez, Alyssa Williams, Nicole Fairchild, Taylor Jenkins, and Rebecca Chen." I read the list 3 times, searching for my name, but it wasn't there. I had been completely removed from the bridal party without a single conversation. My hands trembled as I dialed Stephanie's number. "Hello," she answered, sounding irritated. "Steph, I just got your email," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My name isn't on the bridesmaid list." A long pause followed. "Oh, right. I was going to call you about that. What happened? I'm not even a bridesmaid now?" She sighed dramatically. "Look, Bradley and I had to cut down the wedding party for budget reasons. His parents are paying for everything, and they needed to trim the headcount." "Budget reasons? Stephanie, I've already bought the dress. I've spent thousands on your pre-wedding events." "I'm sorry about the dress," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "Maybe you can return it? Return a custom-altered bridesmaid dress?" I was nearly shouting now, drawing concerned glances from coworkers. I lowered my voice. "Stephanie, this doesn't make sense. We're sisters." "Madison, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. It's our wedding, our decision." After hanging up, I sat frozen at my desk, humiliated and confused. I couldn't focus on work for the rest of the day. That evening, while mindlessly scrolling through Instagram to distract myself, I saw a post from Nicole, one of the bridesmaids. It showed a group of women at what appeared to be a bridesmaids' luncheon, an event I hadn't been invited to. More shocking were 2 unfamiliar faces tagged as new bridesmaids. So much for cutting down the wedding party. They hadn't cut anyone but me, they'd actually added 2 new bridesmaids in my place. The following Sunday dinner at our parents' house was unbearably tense. Nobody mentioned my exclusion from the bridal party, though it hung in the air like a toxic cloud. When I finally brought it up over dessert, my mother quickly changed the subject. "Madison, did you hear your cousin Laura got promoted?" she asked loudly, cutting off my question about the wedding. After dinner, I cornered my parents in the kitchen while Stephanie was on the phone with Bradley in the living room. "Are you two really okay with what's happening?" I asked incredulously. "Your own daughter being thrown out of her sister's wedding party without explanation?" My father sighed, looking uncomfortable. "Sweetheart, it's Stephanie's day. We can't interfere with her decisions, even when those decisions are cruel and make no sense." "Dad, I'm your daughter too." My mother placed her hand on my arm. "Madison, please don't make a scene. The Williamses are very traditional people with certain expectations. Sometimes we need to accommodate others." "Accommodate? By pretending I don't exist? By letting Stephanie treat me like garbage?" "You've always been so independent, dear," my mother said, her tone suggesting this was somehow a character flaw. "Stephanie needs more support right now. Can't you just be happy for her?" I left their house feeling more alone than ever. My own parents were choosing peace with the wealthy Williamses over standing up for me. The betrayal cut deep. The next day, my college friend Kate called. She'd run into a mutual acquaintance who knew Stephanie. "Madison, I don't know how to tell you this," Kate began hesitantly, "but Melanie said Stephanie's been saying some things about you." "What things?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. "That you're too successful and independent, that you would overshadow her at the wedding, that you've always tried to one-up her, and this is her time to shine." I felt physically ill. These weren't just thoughtless actions, my sister was actively turning people against me, painting me as some sort of villain for having a successful career and independent life. That night, Rachel found me in my apartment, surrounded by tissues and empty wine glasses. I'd finally broken down completely. She hates me, Rach, I sobbed. My own sister hates me because I have a career I love. My parents are taking her side. I don't understand any of this. Rachel held me while I cried, then helped me clean up. Have you considered talking to someone professional about this? Family dynamics can be incredibly painful, especially when they shift like this. I took her advice and scheduled an appointment with a therapist, Dr. Levine, who specialized in family relationships. After hearing my story, she leaned forward thoughtfully. Madison, what you're describing sounds like a pattern I see often when family systems are disrupted by new influences, especially wealth and status. Your sister may be trying to fit into her new world by distancing herself from her old one, including you. But why would my parents enable it? I asked. Parents often take the path of least resistance. Standing up to your sister and her fiancé's family would create conflict. It's easier for them to pressure you to accommodate because they know you're more likely to be reasonable. Her words resonated painfully. I'd always been the strong one, the reasonable one. Now that strength was being exploited because everyone assumed I could handle the rejection. Despite everything, I decided I would still attend the wedding. I bought an expensive crystal vase from their registry and a tasteful navy dress that wouldn't compete with the bridal party's sage green. I was determined to take the high road to show my family that I could be supportive without being a doormat. But the universe had other plans, and the worst betrayal was yet to come. The formal wedding invitation arrived in a thick cream envelope with gold embossing. I opened it with trembling fingers, relieved to see my name. Miss Madison Hayes, +1. Despite everything, I hadn't been completely cut out of my sister's wedding. I placed the invitation on my refrigerator, a small victory in the ongoing family drama. 3 weeks before the wedding, I was preparing a presentation for a major client when an email notification appeared on my screen. From Stephanie, subject line, about the wedding. My stomach knotted as I opened it. Madison, after careful consideration and discussions with Bradley and his family, we think it would be best if you didn't attend the wedding. With the limited space and some concerns that have been raised, we feel your presence might create unnecessary tension or drama on our special day. I hope you understand this difficult decision. Love, Stephanie. I read it 3 times, unable to process the words. Uninvited, completely excluded, from my own sister's wedding. Not even worthy of a phone call, just a cold, formal email, as if declining a business proposal. The room seemed to spin around me. I called my parents immediately, certain they would finally see how outrageous this situation had become. Mom, did you know about this? I demanded when she answered. A pause. Yes, honey. Stephanie mentioned she'd spoken with you. Spoken with me? She sent me a form rejection email? She's uninviting me from her wedding. How can you and Dad be okay with this? My mother sighed. Madison, maybe it's best if you sit this one out. Bradley's family is very concerned about making the right impression with some important business connections who'll be there. And I damaged their precious image. How exactly? Another uncomfortable pause. Honey, you know how you can be. You're very opinionated. Bradley's family comes from a world where women are more traditional. The implication hit me like a physical blow. I was being excluded because I was a successful, independent woman who might say something that would offend the delicate sensibilities of Bradley's rich, conservative family. So I'm an embarrassment, I said flatly. No one said that, Madison. Maybe you could send a nice gift and we can all have dinner after they return from the honeymoon? I hung up, too stunned and hurt to continue the conversation. Later that evening, I scrolled through Instagram and saw that Stephanie had posted photos from her bridal shower, another event I hadn't been invited to. The comments section was filled with excitement about the upcoming wedding. A distant cousin I barely knew mentioned how thrilled she was to have received her invitation. Even my mother's book club friend had been invited. Apparently, limited space only applied to the sister of the bride. The final straw came at the following Sunday family dinner. I debated not going, but some desperate part of me hoped for support, understanding, or at least acknowledgement of how wrong this situation had become. Instead, I walked into a celebration. The dining room was decorated with more sage green accents, and Stephanie was showing everyone photos of the final floral arrangements. When I entered, conversation halted briefly before resuming with forced brightness. During dinner, I finally broached the subject directly. So, I guess no one wants to talk about the fact that I've been uninvited from my only sister's wedding? My father placed his fork down carefully. Madison, can't you just let your sister have her moment? Why do you always have to make everything about you? The unfairness of this statement left me speechless. I looked around the table at Stephanie's smug expression, at my mother's averted eyes, at my father's disappointment, and suddenly saw my family with perfect clarity. They weren't going to stand up for me. Not now, not ever. You know what? You're right, I said, standing up. This is Stephanie's moment, and Bradley's moment, and apparently the moment for everyone except me, the difficult daughter who committed the unforgivable sin of building her own successful life instead of waiting around for a wealthy man to validate her existence. I grabbed my purse and walked out, ignoring my mother's calls to come back. At home, I collapsed on my bed and cried until I had no tears left. The complete family abandonment hit me in waves of pain and grief. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. I didn't get out of bed. I didn't answer calls or texts. By the third day of my isolation, Rachel used her spare key to check on me and found me in a state of utter despair. Madison, you're scaring me, she said, taking in my unwashed hair and the takeout containers piling up. My coworker Jessica arrived shortly after, equally concerned. The team is worried about you. Diana asked me to check in. They sat on either side of me on the couch as I struggled to articulate the depth of my pain. It's not just missing the wedding, I explained through tears. It's being erased by my own family. Like my existence is an inconvenience. Like everything I've worked for is something to be ashamed of rather than celebrated. This is not okay, Madison, Jessica said firmly. What they're doing to you is emotional abuse. I feel so humiliated, I whispered. Everyone will be there, family, childhood friends, colleagues, and they'll all know I wasn't wanted. That night, after Rachel and Jessica left with promises to check on me again, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The wedding was now just over 2 weeks away. The thought of sitting alone in my apartment while my entire family celebrated without me was unbearable. The rage, hurt, and humiliation swirled together into a toxic mix that threatened to consume me. Around 3 a.m., something shifted inside me. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was survival instinct, but a strange calm settled over me. If I wasn't welcome at my sister's celebration, perhaps it was time to create a celebration of my own, one that honored the independent spirit my family seemed so determined to punish. As dawn broke over the New York skyline, I made a decision that would change everything. I woke the next morning with unexpected clarity, as if the night's tears had washed away the fog of hurt and betrayal. Sitting on my balcony with coffee, I called Rachel. I'm not going to spend the wedding weekend crying in my apartment, I told her, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. Thank God, Rachel replied. I was worried about you. What's the plan? I'm thinking about going somewhere. Not hiding, celebrating. I love this already. Where? A memory surfaced the semester I'd spent in Italy during college, the happiest and most liberating months of my life. The cobblestone streets of Rome, the cliffside villages of the Amalfi Coast, the incredible food and wine, the way Italians celebrated life without apology. Italy, I said decisively. I'm going back to Italy. Rachel's enthusiasm was immediate. Yes, absolutely perfect. When do we start planning? That afternoon, Rachel and Jessica came over with laptops and wine. As we researched flights and accommodations, the energy in my apartment transformed from grief to excitement. Wait, Jessica said, looking up from her screen. The wedding is on June 18th, right? There's a direct flight to Rome on the 16th. You could be waking up in Italy on what would have been the rehearsal dinner day. It felt right symbolic somehow. You know, Jessica continued, her marketing mind clearly turning. You should document this journey. I'm not saying do it for revenge, but as a way to reclaim your narrative. What do you mean? Social media. Show yourself living your best life, not in a bitter way, but in an I choose joy way. You're a successful woman taking herself on a dream trip to Italy. That's a story worth telling. Rachel nodded enthusiastically. She's right. Plus, it would give you something positive to focus on instead of what you're missing at home. I hesitated. I don't want to seem petty. It's not petty to choose happiness over victimhood, Jessica insisted. What if we created a hashtag? Something like number my own fairy tale tour? For the first time in weeks, I laughed genuinely. That's actually kind of perfect. We spent the evening plotting my Italian adventure. Instead of using the money I'd saved for Stephanie's wedding gift and related expenses, I decided to invest it in myself, luxury accommodations, food tours, a professional photo shoot in the Italian countryside. The next day, I requested 2 weeks of vacation from work, something I'd never done before. To my surprise, my boss Diana not only approved it immediately, but offered unexpected support. Madison, I've watched you pour yourself into both your career and your sister's wedding preparations, she said. You've earned this break. Actually, I have a villa in Positano that sits empty most of the year. You're welcome to stay there. I was speechless. Diana, that's incredibly generous, she smiled. The caretaker, Antonio, will make sure everything's ready for you. His daughter Lucia is a photographer. She could help capture some memories if you'd like. As the trip came together, I felt my power returning. I shopped for a new wardrobe, flowing dresses, elegant sandals, accessories that made me feel beautiful and confident. I researched hidden local spots beyond the typical tourist attractions. I even scheduled a session with Dr. Levine before my departure to process my feelings. What you're doing is healthy, she assured me. You're choosing to redirect your energy towards self-care rather than rumination. Just be mindful that this trip won't erase the pain of family rejection. You'll still need to address those wounds when you return. 2 days before my departure, my mother texted, "Are you over your tantrum yet? We need to discuss family photos for the wedding." For once, I didn't feel the sting of her dismissal. I replied simply, "I won't be at the wedding, as per Stephanie's request. Instead, I'm choosing to celebrate life in Italy. I wish everyone a beautiful day." My mother's response was immediate and predictable. "You're being selfish as usual." I didn't respond. For the first time, I recognized this pattern for what it was: emotional manipulation designed to make me doubt myself. But I was done doubting. I was done apologizing for who I was. The night before my flight, I packed with careful intention, placing a journal in my carry-on to document my journey. On an impulse, I decided to share my first social media post, a simple photo of my packed suitcase with the caption, "Sometimes when a door closes, it's time to book a flight instead. Heading to Italy tomorrow for a journey of self-discovery and celebration. Life is too short to wait for invitations." Number, my own fairy tale tour. I didn't tag Stephanie or mention the wedding. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming my joy. As I fell asleep that night, I felt lighter than I had in months. The hurt wasn't gone, but something new was taking root alongside it, a fierce determination to live my life on my own terms, regardless of who approved. The response to my post was immediate and overwhelming. Friends, colleagues, and even acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years left supportive comments. My phone continued to buzz with notifications as my plane took off the next morning, carrying me toward an adventure I couldn't yet imagine. I arrived in Rome exhausted from the overnight flight but buzzing with anticipation. The familiar chaos of Fiumicino Airport, the rapid-fire Italian announcements, the stylish travelers wheeling designer luggage, the scent of espresso from tiny airport cafes brought back a flood of memories from my college semester abroad. Rather than heading straight to bed, I checked into my boutique hotel near the Spanish Steps and forced myself to stay awake to beat the jet lag. After a quick shower and change into a breezy white sundress, I set out to reacquaint myself with the eternal city. Rome in June was gloriously alive, streets filled with locals and tourists, cafes spilling onto sidewalks, the evening light turning ancient buildings golden. I wandered without purpose, letting my feet carry me through familiar neighborhoods until I found myself standing before the Trevi Fountain as dusk fell. The magnificent Baroque masterpiece was crowded as always, but I managed to find a spot at the edge of the basin. According to tradition, a coin thrown with your right hand over your left shoulder ensured a return to Rome. 8 years ago, as a college student, I'd tossed a coin and made that wish. Now I was back, though under circumstances I could never have imagined. I pulled a coin from my purse, closed my eyes, and made a different wish, not for return, but for renewal. For the strength to rebuild my sense of self outside the shadow of family expectation. When I opened my eyes, I noticed a couple nearby taking photos and impulsively asked if they would take one of me. In the picture, the fountain glowed behind me, and despite my exhaustion, there was a spark in my eyes that had been missing for months. On a whim, I posted it to Instagram with the caption, "Making my own wishes come true. Number my own fairytale tour. Number Rome. Number Trevi Fountain." It was evening in New York, and I knew from social media that Stephanie's rehearsal dinner would be starting soon. Instead of letting that knowledge crush me, I turned off my phone notifications, found a small trattoria, and ordered a glass of wine and Cassio e Pepe. This moment was mine alone. The next morning, my phone was flooded with notifications. My Trevi Fountain post had received hundreds more likes and comments than anything I'd ever shared before. Friends from college, distant acquaintances, and even strangers were leaving supportive messages. Living your best life. This is how you respond to negativity with grace. Thank you for showing us that sometimes we need to create our own celebrations. Even more surprisingly, several travel accounts had reposted my photo, and my follower count had tripled overnight. Puzzled but pleased by the unexpected attention, I continued with my plans for the day before catching my train to Naples. The journey south was a meditation in itself, watching the Italian countryside roll by, villages perched on hillsides, the Mediterranean appearing and disappearing from view. In Naples, a private car arranged by Diana awaited to take me along the breathtaking coastal road to Positano. Nothing could have prepared me for Diana's villa. Perched on the cliffside with unobstructed views of the turquoise sea, it was more like a small palace, 3 bedrooms, a kitchen with professional-grade appliances, a terrace that wrapped around the entire structure, and an infinity pool that appeared to merge with the ocean. I stood on the terrace in stunned silence, taking in the postcard-perfect view of Positano's colorful buildings cascading down to the water. Antonio, the caretaker, greeted me warmly in heavily accented English. "Signora Diana said you need peace and beauty. You find both here." He showed me around the villa, explaining the various amenities and ensuring I felt comfortable before mentioning his daughter. "Lucia will come tomorrow if you like. She knows all secret places tourists never see, and she takes beautiful photographs." I thanked him and spent the rest of the evening on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. For the first time, I deliberately avoided checking social media or thinking about what was happening back home. This moment, this magnificent, peaceful moment, was mine alone. The next morning, the day of Stephanie's wedding, I woke early and decided to sit with my feelings. I'd expected grief, anger, perhaps even the temptation to check social media for wedding updates. Instead, I found myself experiencing an unexpected calm. Sitting on the terrace with coffee, watching fishing boats dot the horizon, I realized I was exactly where I needed to be. Lucia arrived mid-morning, a vibrant woman about my age, with an infectious smile and a camera bag slung over her shoulder. Her English was excellent, honed through years of working with international clients. "My father says you are here to heal your heart," she said directly, sitting across from me on the terrace. "Italy is good medicine for this." Something about her straightforward manner made me comfortable immediately. Before I knew it, I was telling her the entire story: Stephanie, the wedding, the family betrayal. Lucia listened without interruption, then nodded decisively. Today, we do not think of this wedding. Today is for you to discover the Positano that tourists never see. And if you want, I take photos that show your strength, not your pain. She took me through narrow alleyways that wound up the hillside, introducing me to local shopkeepers and artisans. We visited a lemon grove, where an elderly woman showed us how to make proper limoncello. We hiked to a hidden cove accessible only by a steep path known mainly to locals. Throughout the day, Lucia occasionally raised her camera, capturing candid moments, my delight at discovering a tiny ceramic shop, my concentration as I learned to fold pasta dough with a grandmother who spoke no English but communicated perfectly through gestures and smiles. By late afternoon, we arrived at a small family-run restaurant perched on a cliff far from the tourist areas. The owner, Maria, embraced Lucia like family and ushered us to a table with a spectacular view. "Now, we do something special," Lucia announced. From her bag, she produced a flowing blue dress. "Change into this." We take sunset photos on my cousin's boat. An hour later, I found myself on a vintage wooden boat, the blue dress billowing in the breeze as we glided along the coast. The setting sun cast everything in a magical golden light as Lucia directed me with gentle guidance. "Look toward the horizon. Now close your eyes and feel the wind. Turn slightly toward me, but keep your gaze distant." I felt transformed, not into someone else, but into the most authentic version of myself, free from judgment, expectations, or the constant pressure to minimize my light so others wouldn't feel overshadowed. That evening, with Lucia's permission, I posted one of the boat photos with a caption that came straight from my heart. "Today I chose joy. Not because it was easy, but because I deserve it. We all do." Number my own Fairytale tour. Number Amalfi Coast. I went to bed early, emotionally drained but peaceful, without checking for responses. The next morning, my phone was buzzing continuously with notifications. Overnight, the hashtag number my own Fairytale tour had started trending. My photo had been shared thousands of times, and my follower count had jumped from a few thousand to over 50,000. More surprisingly, several women's magazines and travel blogs had sent interview requests, and a major travel brand had messaged about a potential collaboration. One message particularly caught my attention from a woman who wrote that she'd been excluded from her brother's wedding under similar circumstances and was inspired by my response. "I've spent 3 years bitter and hurt," she wrote. "Watching you choose joy instead of resentment has given me permission to finally move on. Thank you for showing another way." As I sat processing this unexpected turn of events, Lucia called, "Madison, have you seen? You are becoming famous in Italy, too. Several people recognized your photo when I showed my mother. They want to know your story." That afternoon, as I walked through Positano with Lucia, 2 American tourists stopped me. "Are you the woman from Instagram? The one doing her own Fairytale tour?" Stunned, I nodded. "We love what you're doing," one of them said. "So empowering and inspiring." By evening, Rachel called, barely containing her excitement. "Maddie, do you have any idea what's happening? Your story is going viral." That blue dress photo has been shared by major women's accounts and travel influencers. Number my own Fairytale tour is trending nationally. "It's just a few vacation photos," I protested, genuinely confused by the reaction. "It's more than that," Rachel insisted. "You've struck a nerve. So many women feel pressured to shrink themselves for other people's comfort. You're showing another way." That night, after dinner at the villa with Lucia and her cousin Marco, a local chef who'd insisted on cooking for us when he heard my story, I sat on the terrace reflecting on this unexpected turn of events. What had begun as a private act of self-preservation had somehow become a public statement that was resonating with thousands of strangers. Marco joined me, bringing 2 glasses of local wine. With his limited English and my limited Italian, we managed a meaningful conversation about family, expectations, and the courage to live authentically. "In Italia, famiglia is everything," he said thoughtfully. "But sometimes, the greatest act of love is to be true to yourself first." As stars appeared above the Mediterranean, I realized that somehow, in choosing to celebrate myself instead of mourning my exclusion, I'd accidentally created something much bigger than a personal healing journey, and I had no idea where it might lead. The next morning, I awoke to find my phone buzzing nonstop with notifications. Overnight, the blue dress photo had exploded across multiple platforms. Rachel had already texted, "Turn on CNN. They're talking about you in their social media segment." Disbelieving, I fumbled with the TV remote, and sure enough, there was my photo on the screen with the headline, "Solo Traveler's Fairytale Tour Goes Viral After Wedding Snub." The commentator was speaking. Madison Hayes' story has struck a chord with thousands of women worldwide. Uninvited from her sister's wedding, instead of wallowing, she created her own celebration, a solo trip to Italy that has now inspired a movement about choosing joy and self-worth over family obligation. My email inbox had hundreds of new messages, journalists requesting interviews, women sharing similar stories of family rejection, and perhaps most surprisingly, a message from Voyager Travel, one of the largest luxury travel brands in the world. "We're inspired by your authentic journey of self-discovery and would like to discuss potential partnership opportunities. Your message of choosing joy and self-celebration aligns perfectly with our brand values." As I sat stunned on the terrace, my phone rang. Jessica, calling from New York. "You've completely broken the internet," she exclaimed without preamble. "I've worked in digital marketing for 8 years and I've never seen organic growth like this. You gained over 200,000 followers overnight." "This is insane," I whispered. "I was just trying to survive a painful weekend." "That's exactly why it's resonating," Jessica explained. "It's authentic. You weren't trying to go viral, you were just honestly sharing your journey." Before I could respond, a text from Rachel appeared. "Stephanie's wedding photos are getting completely overshadowed by your story. Several of your relatives have already followed your account." I felt a complex mix of emotions, vindication, certainly, but not the bitter satisfaction I might have expected. Instead, I felt strangely free, as if the universe had validated my worth in the most public way possible. That afternoon, while enjoying a cappuccino at a cliffside cafe, I was approached by a group of American tourists. "Are you Madison? From Instagram?" one asked excitedly. When I nodded, they asked for photos together, telling me how inspired they were by my story. Lucia arrived to find me surrounded by impromptu fans. "You are celebrity now," she laughed. "Come, we use this for good photos." She whisked me away to a secluded spot where we created more content, not posed or pretentious, but genuine moments of joy, as I explored hidden villages and local markets. "Today we go to my friend Marco's restaurant," Lucia announced later. "He wants to show you real Italian cooking, not tourist food." Marco greeted us warmly at his family's small, elegant restaurant nestled in the hills above Positano. Instead of seating us in the dining room, he led us through to the kitchen. "Today, you cook with me," he declared, handing me an apron. For the next 2 hours, Marco guided me through preparing an authentic Italian feast, handmade pasta, fresh seafood caught that morning, vegetables from his family's garden. His passion for preserving traditional methods was infectious, and I found myself completely immersed in the experience, momentarily forgetting about viral photos and social media fame. As we worked side by side, Marco shared stories of his own family's expectations, his father's disappointment when Marco chose culinary school over the family fishing business, the years of tension before his father finally recognized his son's talent and passion. "Sometimes the people who should support us most are the ones who understand us least," he said philosophically as he showed me how to properly roll pasta dough. "But living to make others happy is like cooking without salt, no flavor, no joy." That evening, we enjoyed our handmade feast on the restaurant's private terrace as the sun set over the Mediterranean. The simple authenticity of the moment, good food, new friendship, breathtaking beauty, felt like the perfect antidote to the artificial society wedding happening thousands of miles away. The next morning brought another surprise. An email from Voyager Travel offering an all-expenses-paid yacht day trip to Capri in exchange for social content. It was followed by interview requests from Women's Health, Travel Plus Leisure, and several podcasts focused on women's empowerment. They want to know your story, Lucia said when I called her, overwhelmed by the attention. But you decide how much to share. I accepted the Voyager offer, and the following day found myself on a luxury yacht bound for Capri, accompanied by a professional photography team. As we cruised along the stunning coastline, I conducted a phone interview with Women's Health. What would you say to other women facing family rejection? The journalist asked. That your worth isn't determined by whether others choose to celebrate you, I answered honestly. Sometimes the healthiest response to exclusion is to create your own inclusive space, one that honors exactly who you are. Rachel called that evening as I returned from Capri. Just so you know, she said hesitantly, Stephanie's wedding photos are barely getting any attention. Everyone from your hometown is talking about you instead. How do you know? Taylor, your cousin, messaged me. She thinks what you're doing is badass and wants to know if you'll talk to her. I was surprised. Taylor, several years younger than me, had always been close to Stephanie. Of course I'll talk to her. Later, Diana called from New York. Madison, I hope you don't mind my directness, but have you considered the business opportunity in front of you? What do you mean? You've accidentally created a powerful brand narrative about authentic travel and self-worth. Our agency has clients who would pay significant amounts to align with what you're building. And beyond that, I think you might have found your calling. The content you're creating is resonating because it's genuine. As we discussed possibilities, I felt a surprising sense of clarity. What had begun as an escape from pain was evolving into something meaningful, a platform to help others find their own path to joy and self-acceptance. That evening, Marco invited me to join him for a sunset walk along a hidden coastal path. As we strolled, he shared his perspective on my unexpected fame. In Italy, we believe that beauty comes from authenticity, he said thoughtfully. People respond to your story because they see truth, not performance. Looking out at the Mediterranean painted gold by the setting sun, I realized I felt no desire to check social media for updates on Stephanie's wedding. For the first time in months, I felt completely present in my own life, not in relation to my sister or my family's expectations, but simply as myself, Madison Hayes, a woman discovering her own capacity for joy. Later that night, I conducted an Instagram live session, answering questions about my journey. Instead of focusing on the wedding drama, I emphasized the process of reclaiming personal joy after disappointment. The most powerful realization, I told the thousands of viewers who had joined, is that happiness isn't something we need permission to pursue. Sometimes the most healing response to rejection is to throw yourself a better party, one that celebrates exactly who you are. As I ended the broadcast, I noticed a message from my cousin Taylor. We need to talk. There's more to the story of why you were uninvited than you know. The email from Stephanie arrived 3 days after her wedding, while I was having breakfast on the villa's terrace. The subject line read simply, "How could you?" The content matched the accusatory tone. "I can't believe you would deliberately try to steal attention from my wedding day with your attention-seeking social media stunt. Was it not enough to be difficult throughout the entire wedding planning process? Did you have to make sure my special day was overshadowed by your Italian vacation? Everyone is talking about your ridiculous photos instead of my wedding. You've always been selfish, but this is a new low even for you." I set my phone down, surprised by how little her words hurt compared to the pain I'd felt just a week earlier. Before I could formulate a response, my parents called. "Madison," my mother began without preamble, "we're very disappointed in your behavior. Flaunting yourself all over the internet during your sister's wedding was incredibly disrespectful." "Disrespectful?" I repeated, the irony almost laughable. I was uninvited from my own sister's wedding with no legitimate explanation. The entire family supported that decision. "What exactly did you expect me to do?" "We expected you to handle it with maturity," my father interjected. "Not turn it into some social media spectacle for attention." "I went on a trip to heal, Dad. I didn't ask or expect to go viral. But maybe you should ask yourselves why my story of choosing joy after rejection is resonating with so many people." After ending the call, I sat in thoughtful silence. Then I called Rachel, who had been my emotional anchor throughout this journey. Their reaction is so predictable, it's almost comical, Rachel said after I recounted the conversation. They're upset because you refused to play the role they assigned you, the difficult daughter who should accept mistreatment graciously to keep everyone comfortable. I think I'm finally seeing the pattern, I admitted. My family has always expected me to shrink myself to accommodate Stephanie's insecurities. When I refused to do that in my career, they labeled me as selfish and difficult. That's exactly what my therapist would call a dysfunctional family system, Rachel replied. Have you thought about extending your stay? You seem to be doing some important healing there. The idea immediately felt right. After talking with Diana, who enthusiastically supported the extension and even offered to have me create content for some of our agency's travel clients, I decided to stay in Italy for 2 more weeks. That evening, I received an unexpected message from my younger cousin Taylor. Madison, I've been wanting to reach out for weeks but was afraid of causing drama before the wedding. There's something you should know. Your exclusion wasn't really about budget cuts or limited space. Bradley's parents never liked your independent lifestyle. They thought you were a bad influence on Stephanie because you're successful on your own terms instead of following the traditional path they value for women. They pressured Stephanie to distance herself from you, and Stephanie admitted to me she was jealous of your career success and the attention you get. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Your Italy posts inspired me to apply for that study abroad program I was afraid to pursue. Taylor's message confirmed what I'd suspected, but provided context that helped me understand Stephanie's behavior, not excuse it, but see it through a lens of compassion. Her insecurity had made her vulnerable to manipulation by Bradley's family, who saw my independence as threatening to their traditional values. Meanwhile, the viral attention continued to grow. I was featured in major women's magazines and invited to appear on several morning shows upon my return to New York. Diana's suggestion about building on this platform evolved into a concrete opportunity, creating authentic travel content focused on self-discovery and personal growth for our agency's luxury travel clients. Marco and I continued to grow closer during my extended stay. He showed me parts of the Amalfi Coast only locals knew, secluded beaches, accessible only by boat, family-run farms perched on terraced hillsides, ancient ruins overlooked by most tour guides. Our connection remained respectful and unhurried, both of us aware of the temporary nature of my stay, yet appreciating the genuine bond forming between us. During my final week in Italy, I published what became my most meaningful post, yet a reflection on my journey that transcended the initial wedding drama. This trip began as an escape from rejection, but evolved into a journey back to myself. Italy reminded me that joy is not dependent on others' approval. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves, and ultimately for others, is to honor our own light, even when others find it too bright. I'm grateful for the unexpected turn this journey has taken, and for all of you who have joined me along the way. My own Fairytale tour isn't about revenge or even independence. It's about the courage to celebrate your own worth, especially when others cannot or will not. The post received millions of likes and thousands of comments from women, sharing their own stories of finding strength after rejection. A publisher reached out about turning my experience into a memoir about family dynamics, self-worth, and the courage to create one's own celebrations in life. My last dinner in Positano was with Marco at his restaurant, now closed to the public for our private farewell meal. He had prepared all my favorites from our cooking lessons together. "Italy will miss you," he said as we shared tiramisu. "I will miss you. I'll be back," I promised. This place has become part of my healing story. We exchanged contact information, with plans to stay connected, both of us realistic about the distance yet open to possibilities. "Whatever happens," Marco said, "remember what you learned here. Your joy belongs to you. No one can take it unless you allow them to." Upon returning to New York, I was greeted by a very different reality than the one I'd left. My social media following had grown to over 1 million people. Diana had created a new position for me leading our agency's authentic travel content division. The publisher had officially offered a book deal for my memoir. The first family gathering after my return was my cousin's graduation party. I approached it with new boundaries and clarity, determined to maintain the peace I'd found in Italy. Stephanie was there, looking uncomfortable as I entered. Several relatives immediately approached me, curious about my Italian adventure and newfound fame. I noticed my parents watching nervously from across the room. Later, Stephanie found me alone on the patio. "Your posts were really beautiful," she said awkwardly. "Italy looks amazing." "It was," I replied simply. "I'm sorry things happened the way they did," she offered. Not quite an apology, but the closest she could manage. Bradley's family had very specific expectations, and I felt caught in the middle. I studied my sister, the person who had once been my closest friend, now almost a stranger. "I understand pressure from others, Stephanie. What hurt most was that you chose their approval over our relationship." "I made a mistake," she admitted quietly, "seeing how happy you looked in Italy. I realized what Bradley's family thinks shouldn't have mattered more than my own sister." It was a small olive branch, imperfect but genuine. I accepted it for what it was, without expecting immediate resolution of the complex family dynamics that had led to our estrangement. "Maybe we can get coffee sometime," I suggested. "Start small," she nodded, relieved. "I'd like that." 6 months later, my life had transformed in ways I could never have predicted. My memoir was nearing completion, my travel content career was thriving, and I made regular trips to Italy, where Marco and I continued to explore our connection. With each visit, our relationship deepened, unrestricted by traditional expectations or timelines. My relationship with my family was slowly healing on more equal terms. Stephanie and I had established a cautious new friendship, different from our childhood closeness, but honest in a way our relationship had never been before. My parents were gradually adjusting to the daughter who refused to diminish herself for others' comfort, though old habits sometimes resurfaced. One evening, sitting on my New York apartment balcony, as the sun set over the city skyline, I scrolled through messages from followers still inspired by my journey. I also had texts from both Marco and a more respectful Stephanie on my phone. The contrast between my life now and 6 months ago was remarkable, not because of the external success, but because of the internal shift toward authentic self-worth. The viral attention would eventually fade, but the lesson would remain. Sometimes being excluded is the universe's way of redirecting you to where you truly belong. Sometimes the path to healing lies not in fighting for a place at someone else's table, but in creating your own celebration, one that honors exactly who you are. If my story has resonated with you, I'd love to hear about a time when rejection led you to something better in your own life. Drop a comment below to share your experience. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding strength in unexpected places, and hit that like button if you've ever had to create your own celebration when others wouldn't celebrate you. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, your worth is never determined by whether others choose to see it. Here's to creating our own fairy tales, wherever they may lead.